Ok, predlažem da počnemo. Uvažene dame i gospodo zastupnici, poštovani gosti, članovi Vijeća ministara Bosne i Hercegovine, uvaženi prisutni, otvaram sjednicu predstavničkog doma Parlamentarne skupštine Bosne i Hercegovine. Sada ćemo čuti himnu Bosne i Hercegovine. Na današnju sjednicu su osim zastupnika i visokog predstavnika za Bosnu i Hercegovinu, gospodina Christiana Schmidta, kojeg srdačno pozdravljamo, želimo mu dobrodošlicu u predstavnički dom Parlamentarne skupštine Bosne i Hercegovine. Pozvani su i predstavnici zemalja članica Upravnog odbora Vijeća za provođenje mira. Još želim podsjetiti i na to da je osiguran i direktan TV prijenos ove sjednice. Još jednom srdačnu dobrodošlicu želim visokom predstavniku kao i svim gostima na današnjoj sjednici. U ovome trenutku je ispunjen kvorum i možemo normalno početi raditi. Kao što vam je naznačeno u pozivu, sjednica je sazvana u skladu s odlukom kolegija doma u proširenom sastavu i u pozivu za sjednicu naznačeno je da će se zastupnicima Parlamentarne skupštine Bosne i Hercegovine obratiti visoki predstavnik za Bosnu i Hercegovinu, gospodin Christian Schmidt. Sada pozivam visokog predstavnika, gospodina Schmidta, da se obrati predstavničkom domu. Izvolite.
Dame i gospodo, dobar dan. Hvala vam na prilici da vam se danas obratim. Želim pozdraviti građane Bosne i Hercegovine. I'm sure you're noticing that I have some practice to add to speak your language, but I'm working on it. Thank you very much, Speaker, Deputy Speaker, dear colleagues in the Parliament. In a democracy, the Parliament is the right place to pay undivided respect to peoples of all backgrounds. So I feel somehow at home here, if you agree, as in three contexts. The first is that I just on Tuesday has ended my mandate as elected member of the German parliament. Over 31 years, and so I have a lot of experience. I see that you are more modern than the German parliament. We have not such a screen where it's clear whether there is the quorum reached or not. And we have probably some different traditions, but one is the same. Parliament comes from the Latin word parlare, to speak and to hear, and to exchange, having dissenting opinions, because we do not want to have this large people's congress where you have 4,000 people sitting and just applauding every time in the same moment. We are those who are sharing the good experiences of democracy. Well, sometimes it's harsh, it's not so encouraging, and I, as you probably went through not easy times. I have been in government, I've been in opposition, so I know how it is to be seen. The second is why I feel a little bit at home here, because I got such a lot of warm welcome here and in the region. Let me say that this reaches out not only to the area of the Federation. I thank those very much who gave me good ideas, good advices, and good sentiments as well in the Republika Srpska. And the third, why I feel a little bit at home, is because your country is a country which deserves to stay, to feel, and to live. Yes, it's probably a little bit more, should I say, complicated? No, it's more vivid, because the historical tradition of this country is not to be compared with others. You have nearly 1,000 years of history, and in these 1,000 years there have been better and worse times. And so you are here, and if you agree, me, to contribute to the better times, to the future, not referring only to what we had 25, 26, 30 years ago, but to see that this is not only having a kind of ceasefire, but to work on the society and the political climate as it is. It has been my intention to address you after my first 100 days as High Representative. We are nearly at this point. I had sincerely hoped we would be under more positive circumstances, but developments of which you are all aware have meanwhile transpired. It is unfortunate somehow that not all representatives are here, but I do hope they will attend, and they will probably take the opportunity in future to have an exchange. I took on this role to oversee and ensure implementation of the civilian aspects of the General Framework Agreement for Peace when I was asked to do, and I was asked because I have had the opportunity to be several times in several responsibilities in contact with your country. Not only, but in the 8 years where I have been a Deputy Minister of Defense of my country, and quite often not only in Camp Rajlovac and Camp Budmir, but as well in other places. And in the terms of cooperation and state building, if you say, I would not now mean that it's on me having done a lot, but that what we could contribute, including in my time as Minister for quite another issue, for agriculture. I remember very much when we had, for example, the situation that Bosnia-Herzegovina was affected, not yet affected, by another pandemic situation, a virus infection, which is not a human virus infection, but an animal infection, and was on the way to kill the cattle you have in your country, and we could, together with the European Union, work a lot. I took now another role with engagement, knowing that is not easy. I have got a lot of congratulations, especially around this area, not only out of this country. And some said, are you knowing that you're taking one of the most complicated positions existing in this region? So far, I have to say that these people have some reason to say this. But my understanding is that we have to work to get ahead, take and use tools if necessary, but the important thing is that we cannot, in development of Europe, of us all, just stand and wait and do nothing, because world is developing. And if you all are aware, today and these days is starting in Glasgow, the COP26 about environmental issues, and this will determine the future as well of this country, what we are doing to keep our world livable, positive for the people living in there. When I arrived on 1st of August, I received a warm welcome. From a lot of people to whom I'm thankful. I invite the critics to have a dialogue. It is better for responsible people to talk, discuss, and decide instead of comment about each other in the media. By the way, I remember my good friend Jean-Claude Juncker, President of the European Commission, ancient president. He once was criticized because European Union Council meetings are so long. And I have experienced sometimes you're sitting over the night about fish quotas, about other things, and some are saying, okay, is this worth just to sit and to talk? And Jean-Claude Juncker said, you know, I come from one of our nerving and long during meetings, overnight meetings. I had not the competence of Helmut Kohl, who just sit and waited, and nobody could go around him. He knew as long as he's there, things will be decided. And I said, I come home to my father in Luxembourg, and I talked to him and said, oh, this European Union, I'm really nerved about this. I'm just referring to Jean-Claude Juncker, that's not my saying. And then his father said, he told me, he said, look, Jean-Claude, I was in a time when one shooted each other. Better you sit and talk together. And this is the message for our generation. So happy that we are here, that we in an area where we just talking and trying to find developments. At the time, I could not have anticipated in August that Bosnia and Herzegovina would soon face some of the greatest challenges to its sovereignty since the signing of the Dayton Peace Agreement in 1995. During this period, I have met many of you and your political party leaders. Thank you for all this very instructive and informative and personal good talks, hearing your assessments of the situation, and in some cases, proposals for moving forward. I've also met with political leaders in neighboring countries, because good neighborly relations are crucial, especially in this region, and because the leaders are able to influence constructive dialogue. I have as well traveled to several key capitals, won't name this all to you, but those in the Peace Implementation Council Steering Board, they are just very active and encouraged. I have been in Paris, Brussels, The Hague, Ankara, Washington, London, Berlin, Rome, and I'm prepared to go to Moscow. I've used these meetings to keep the senior officials responsible for the Western Balkans apprised for the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I can assure you the issue is very much on their radar, but we all have to work to keep it on the radar. So yes, the international community has a lot of other places in the world to look after. However, our common interest is that they contribute to peaceful developments in the Western Balkans and in Bosnia and Herzegovina, especially. So the meeting in Slovenia of the European Union was a very important one as well. I will shortly travel to New York to address the United Nations Security Council in the context of my report recently submitted to the Secretary General, which is an open assessment of the current state of affairs. In times such as these, I have a strong understanding that many of the citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina are doubtful about the future for themselves and the future for the country. The elected and responsible people in the state, entities, and cantons have to work to reassure everyone of a peaceful, well-settled, and common future in a state respecting everyone's rights. The international community that brokered the peace and the High Representative appointed to oversee peace implementation take this serious. But it cannot happen without you, without those having the democratic responsibility for the country. So I understand my position not to be misunderstood. With all competences international community has agreed on, including the state, but with an attempt to get more and more this, let me say, in the reserve room, if there is anything going not really well. I can assure you that the international community is engaged and considering all necessary and available options, and while I retain the authorities in accordance with my mandate, I will today not speculate about any decisions. How did we get to this point? Unfortunately, this Parliament has not seen much sufficient constructive dialogue during its mandate. The legislative output, you know it as well, has been minimal. I'm not among those who are saying the best parliament is a parliament just has an output of a lot of legislation. But the key issues where one has to agree on, they are necessary, and I think we have to focus on them. The output should be and has to be better. I would say the same for the Council of Ministers, with all respect to those serving in the Council of Ministers. This is a part of a somehow downward trend since 2010. And now we are in a situation in which some elected representatives have left altogether or chosen to selectively participate, paralyzing the parliament. This is not in line with the oath taken by every elected representative, and this could endanger the trust of voters which they have placed in them. By the way, this is not a comment of the High Representative, but of I am allowed to say, an experienced politician, a member of parliament, a member of government. All those who are trying, experience all over the world, just telling stories and not focusing on real challenges of a country, on the long run, they will not have the support. So you all know better than me what the challenges in these countries is. This is about the young generation. This is about economies. And if you agree, I hear too much about discussion who wants which legislation or which kind of solution or better or other dissolution, instead of hearing what do we have to do concretely in terms of come to closer integration with the European Union and a better situation for our people. So I would also take the opportunity to note that today's date of 28th October, the 21 state budget is still not adopted, and there is temporary financing only through December. Yes, one could see that in the Dayton Constitution itself, there is regulation about temporary financing, not just limited to 3 months or quarter. But how it is, the budget was not adopted even before July, and this shows that we have to work on it with the reliability of financing the state institutions. I've learned, and I was a little bit surprised, that in some keys of distributing money in this country, the entities are getting, probably the cantons, and the state does just get a fixed sum and has to meet all his responsibilities, and this is getting more and more complicated. This is just an observation as somebody coming from a country with 16, not entities, but 16 Länder. I can tell you I know a little bit about this, how it is, how complicated to negotiate. But I think there has the need that there will be an often open discussion how to come and to get, should I say, the fair share to the state as well. So I would, not to kid about, but to say defense is a state task and has to be financed on the state level. And I would all encourage who are thinking about some ideas, you know everything, you know all what I'm thinking about, that this is not the way, and this way will not come. Because better let the money following the task and not the task following the money. This trend directly impacts on the capacity of the state institutions to fully meet their constitutional and legal responsibilities, to efficiently and effectively respond to their obligations, and ultimately to be in the best service of citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, in July, the representatives missing here today and others have discussed about legislation. They have decided to leave the state institutions, objecting to the decisions of my predecessor, introducing amendments to the Criminal Code of Bosnia and Herzegovina, sanctioning the denial of genocide and war crimes, and the glorification of convicted war criminals. So far, honestly, what I do beyond this legislation, absolutely do not understand that one blocks the parliament where the real place is to give legislation, what is this, which kind of attitude? There has been some misinformation regarding these amendments. These amendments adhere to the EU framework decision of November 2008, combating certain forms and expressions of racism and xenophobia by means of criminal law. Whatever, I have to make clear that they do not apply to only one single genocide or war crime, or most importantly, only to one people. They serve the victims, the family members of the victims, without prejudice. And you know better than me history in your region. I'm a German. I know what this is about. And so I think it's a need to have the victims and those who passed away in memory and nothing else. Moreover, they mirror legislation adopted by every single Western Balkans country. But I see, and I'm not what made me observing is not the legislation itself and the discussion you can have when and how and who one should deal with this issue. I will contribute from my side to classify this legislation, which should now go back to the Parliament. Responsible politicians, be they Bosniak, Serb, Croat, others or German, French or Polish or whatever you want, have the indispensable task, in view of the clashes of the past, to look towards a brighter, peaceful future. Yes, this is a difficult way to go. Believe me, again, me as a German, I know it. But please do not dwell on the past without reaching conclusions to grow the country into a better place for the younger generation. I will have some information and classification to this legislation, which probably could help us all to have a look on the future. I call on young people to contribute to this necessary discussion, not only among politicians, but in society at large. The real thing what is missing is that I see that we have to encourage those in the parliament with different opinions and in the society to talk openly about the past. This is not easy, and they should not hide situations, but it should make us prepared for drawing conclusions for the future. So this is very, very important. I would have liked to have another possibility to work together with you, with OSCE, with Council of Europe, with others, to work about what this country and the memory of this country could be. Representatives left the institutions of Bosnia and Herzegovina, including this chamber, this premier deliberative body, in the very moment when it should be debating, discussing, and crafting the much-needed reform legislation that would benefit every citizen and move the country forward on its European Union path. Giving up and walking out, jeopardizing the future of the citizens that this body represents is not an option. And I met somebody from the Social Democrat group. I remember the first Social Democrat group leader in German Bundestag, Herbert Wehner, former communist. He had in a debate when my party group in the 70s just went out of one session. He said, wer auszieht, muss auch wieder einziehen. This one who goes out has the duty to come in again. And this is an indispensable duty in the sense of Dayton. But likewise for the issue of state property. The Constitutional Court of Bosnia and Herzegovina has ruled that the state is the title holder of State and Defense Property, and that the Parliamentary Assembly has the executive competence to regulate the apportionment of such assets through the adoption of a state property law. Yes, we should be helpful, and I will be helpful to find solutions which respects the structure of the country, the state level, entities and cantons and municipalities as well. I will take a proactive approach. I'm sure, together with the European Union and the international community, that we can find smart solutions which meet as well sustainable requirements necessary in response to climate change, but this is firstly to this Parliament to decide. The Court has upheld this principle in successive rulings, so recent decisions in this regard could come as no surprise. I would note that decisions of the Constitutional Court are final and binding, as clearly stipulated in the Constitution of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Annex 4 of the peace agreement. Again, the solution of the problem is right in front of us. Come to the institutions, come to the Parliament, craft the legislation that will resolve the issue in accordance with the court rulings and be done. I just can tell you one way will not work out. Just to declare, this is my property, this is a way I haven't found any basis anywhere, and this is the same in Bosnia-Herzegovina. So I'm very clear about this, and I have to appeal, and in this moment to appeal to those responsible. So I've read some things in the Republika Srpska, that they please come back and follow the regulations and come here and work for a new law. This is my objective as part of the 5+2 agenda, and solving these issues would bring Bosnia and Herzegovina not one but two steps closer to graduating from international supervision and further along on its EU path. I encourage you and your missing colleagues to do the work of parliamentarians and tackle this issue head-on. It is unacceptable to hold the institutions hostage and attempt to undo every positive reform over the last 26 years, and there has been a lot of achievement. It is important to remember that a person on the other side of the table or the other side of the aisle is our enemy, but our opponent, a fellow citizen. So let's find the middle ground. Ladies and gentlemen, speaking of reforms, let us remind ourselves of just a few reforms that occurred post-Dayton, which most citizens take for granted and which some would like to undo. Standing in line for hours at embassies waiting for a visa is a thing of the past. You don't have to do that anymore. Since 2010, biometric passports with advanced security features have enabled every citizen of Bosnia-Herzegovina to travel to the European Union without visa. Who will go and explain to the citizens, not to the politicians in Banja Luka, that those who want to travel and getting a new idea of passport, probably except 1 or 2 countries, will not be received anywhere? What is this about? This is an achievement, by the way, very influenced by one of my predecessors, and I'm very strict about this because this is playing politics on the back of the people. The people have the right to go, and not some who wants just to decide because he wants to get some advantage or what, I don't know it. So to be very, very strict. Thanks to the 2008 law on pharmaceuticals and medical devices, which this House endorsed, a state-level agency was established that ensured the availability, efficacy, and safety of modern medicines throughout the country in accordance with EU standards, and I'm profiting myself as well, and those around me. What is this? What kind of politics? Just to want to dissolve such an institution? What? For what? For the health of the people? Or for what? So don't estimate the situation, I have and see responsibilities for me. Not only for me, especially you have in your country, your state body in parliament has decided it is not just to kid and to play with the health situation of the people. And this is something I'm very, very observing. I learned that the marginal majority in the RSNA was remarkable, very marginal, and I encourage all just to sit back and to say, what do you want to have? Safe pharmaceuticals or politics? I would say 99% of the people would vote for safe pharmaceuticals. So let's do it. It was not so long ago, but now in 2021, it is even hard to recall that there was a time when there were still 3 armies in Bosnia and Herzegovina. That was the situation in the country for 11 years after Dayton, until defense reform resulted in the integrated armed forces of Bosnia and Herzegovina. This has enabled the country to better ensure its own security and resulted in the reduction of the international military presence to its current level. There will be no turning back. Additional beneficial reforms, including the establishment of the Indirect Taxation Authority, ITA, the High Judicial and Prosecutorial Council, the State Investigation and Protection Agency, seeing the Justice Minister being here in the room, State Border Service, all of which contributed to the signing of the Stabilization and Association Agreement and speak to this Parliament's capacity to deliver positive change. Thank you. Clearly, the unilateral undoing of any of these or many other reforms would be a severe setback for Bosnia and Herzegovina, jeopardizing not only its EU path, but also its stability and future economic growth. Who would invest in such a future? What about the economic development? So the good news is that nobody, I have met nobody, in this region, around Bosnia-Herzegovina and more, have any interest in assisting in creating a crisis structure, but to have and to keep with Dayton. Yes, we can say Dayton is not the paradise. I'm not here, and we are not to create the paradise. And there could be some improvements. I would like to find them in this parliament here done. Annex 4, amendment to the Constitution. This needs participation and finding new structures. But transfer agreements have been made in the sense of the Dayton Agreement. They have somehow worked out the Dayton Agreement. By the way, if you want to say the original Dayton, and they are profit for the people and for the country and for whole Europe and for security. So first, I would like to underline, this country consists out of a state and 2 entities, and this shall and will remain because this is part of the territorial integrity, sovereignty of this country as it has been formed out in the Dayton General Agreement for Peace. And nobody who wants to have just a discussion of dissolving, be it the state or be it entities, is on the right way. I think there is a need to make this realized again. Clearly, nobody has an interest to turn the clock backwards. Not the citizens, that's for sure. The international community will not sit idly by and allow it to happen. Any attempt to undo 26 years of hard-won progress and peace would be not an acceptable cost. Dear representatives and members of parliament, as High Representative, I call on you to work with me. I invite you in a humble way. I'm not somebody on the way to dominate. I'm just to hear, to understand, but then to decide. To reduce the current intentions should be our work and find an open door for dialogue. It is in our common interest. Citizens deserve a peaceful and prosperous future. What they do not deserve is fear of instability, economic hardship, and fear of peace. Not of peace, or for the peace. An atmosphere of fear and division will only hasten the exodus of young people from Bosnia-Herzegovina who are already leaving due to corruption and lack of rule of law. Yes, I know, have had the possibility to meet one of them who have went back to Bosnia-Herzegovina after being out in the 90s or longer times. This is good. I would like to encourage you. We in the European Union have to work intensely that this gets more basis, but especially my concern is to have the younger people here with ideas, positions. Bosnian and Herzegovinian people are skilled, well-skilled people. They have a lot. I'm very impressed. And they're getting letters from German companies, sitting in Germany, say, oh, what are you, a high representative, don't know exactly what this is, but could you please send me and organize 20 young people to work with me and our company in Munich or in Cologne? I said, okay, there is a ruled structure. Ambassadors are here and know how to deal with it, but this is not my task. My task is to contribute that people say, I can stay here because my standards of living, my expectation, and the rule of law is guaranteed. So if this is the case, and we have such a lot just coming here now, and over at the bridge I saw kindergarten, small, well kept with the vest for signal vests. This is hope. This is the hope for the country, and we should work that all these young kids, they stay here, they travel around, they collect experiences, but they contribute to the work of this country. Probably you say, oh, what kind of visionary, and painting a picture which is not working. Not. I'm coming from a country who went as well through complicated times. And if 1988, somebody would have said to me that my country is reunited, by the way, fully peaceful, without one bullet and one drop of blood. So you would say, like my Helmut Schmidt, the German Bundeskanzler, said, if you have visions, you should not stay in politics, better you go to the doctor. But somehow you need some visions and the responsibility for the younger generation. This affects us all, our kids and our grandchildren. So this is where we have to work. And I think with the help of your work, European Union, with a stable currency, and with a basically good economic outlook, there's a possibility to work on this. Let me be clear. Rhetoric concerning dissolution and challenges to the competences, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of Bosnia-Herzegovina do not meet the real questions. They must stop. There is simply too much at stake. We are committed to peace and stability, and I will be very sensitive that such rhetoric does not become reality. I am personally prepared to engage with each of you and with each body outside and with every political party in finding solutions. And I will continue to meet with you and as well with civil society and to visit capitals and neighbors in the region as an advocate for Bosnia and Herzegovina, for unity in facing the tasks that lie ahead. Those tasks should be carried out in the rest of all citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina and include rooting out corruption, strengthening the rule of law, accelerating economy, improving social welfare, implementing limit constitutional and electoral reform, particular measures to restore voter confidence, the EU recommendations, where, by the way, the last report about the development says that unfortunately no one of the 14 priorities has been fully met. So it is on us together to work on it and to work on whatever is necessary to keep the country moving forward rather than slipping backwards. Then we could come closer to the time when the Office of the High Representative can state that there is strengthened democracy in Bosnia and Herzegovina, not the paradise, I repeat, and the country can graduate to a good future without the need for the High Representative or other international assistance supervision. So I'm working on this not to stay for a lifetime. I'm working on this, and this country deserves that we work together. Hvala vam na pažnji I sigurno se vidimo opet. Thank you very much.
Zahvaljujemo se visokom predstavniku, gospodinu Christianu Schmidtu. Gospodin Schmidt će sada biti otvoren I spreman da odgovori na nekoliko pitanja. Moram reći da postoji jedna vrsta, evo da kažem, kolegijalnog dogovora između šefova klubova, da ispred parlamentarnog kluba u predstavničkom domu šef kluba ili neko iz toga kluba postavi po jedno pitanje uvaženom visokom predstavniku Christianu Schmidtu, tako da će on saslušati ova pitanja. Ja molim gospodina Schmidta da sjede, da sačeka. Vi sjedite pa da čujete pitanja, poslije toga ćete opet izaći da odgovorite. Mi ćemo prvo čuti sva pitanja, a onda će gospodin visoki predstavnik odgovoriti na ta pitanja. Evo, daću prvo riječ gospodinu Osmanoviću, izvolite.
Hvala predsjedavajući, uvažena potpredsjedavajuća, kolegice I kolege poslanici, uvaženi visoki predstavniče gospodine Schmidt, predstavnici međunarodne zajednice. Prije svega želim da vas pozdravim u ime poslanika Stranke demokratske akcije, da pozdravim vašu želju da se obratite ovom visokom domu. Mi smo vaše izlaganje vrlo pažljivo slušali. Ubijeđen sam da je također I bosansko-hercegovačka javnost vrlo pažljivo slušala vaše izlaganje I vaše namjere kako u kom pravcu će se kretati OHR. Ja bih želio da vam postavim samo jedno pitanje. Volio bih da nam na njega date vrlo precizan I jasan odgovor. Šta još treba da se desi, dogodi u našoj državi Bosni I Hercegovini, da biste vi reagovali I time zaštitili Dejtonski mirovni sporazum, aneks 4, pokušaj rušenja ustavno-pravnog poretka, u skladu sa aneksom 10 ovlasti visokog predstavnika I bonskim ovlastima. Daću kraće obrazloženje. Mi smo svjedoci u posljednjih nekoliko mjeseci, nažalost, kao nikada do sada, da u manjem bosansko-hercegovačkom entitetu Republika Srpska imamo otvoreno pokušaj rušenja Dejtonskog mirovnog sporazuma I pokušaj jednostranog prenosa nadležnosti sa države na entitet Republika Srpska. Vi ste to u svom izlaganju također se dotakli te teme. Nedavno je Narodna skupština Republike Srpske donijela zakon o lijekovima I medicinskim sredstvima, čime pokušava potpuno razvlastiti Agenciju za lijekove na državnom nivou. Izjave visokog funkcionera SNSD-a, gospodina Milorada Dodika, da imaju pripremljeni zakoni o odbrani, o visokom sudskom tužilačkom vijeću o upravi za indirektno oporezivanje, o SIP-i, o OSI, što je također pokušaj jednostranog prenošenja nadležnosti sa države na entitetski nivo, čime se doprinosi do slabljenja ekonomske, bezbjedonosne i vojne situacije u Bosni i Hercegovini. Očekujemo direktan i konkretan odgovor na ovo pitanje. Hvala.
Hvala najljepša. Ispred kluba SDP-a, gospodin Magazinović, izvolite.
Zahvaljujem, predsjedavajući. Očigledno ćemo svi, ili bar najveći broj nas, postaviti isto ili slično pitanje gospodinu Schmidtu, ali evo prije pitanja samo dvije konstatacije dakle ponavljanje stava SDP-a. Prvi, za nas je ključna reforma u ovoj državi, reforma pravosuđa, o kojoj, nažalost, danas nije bilo puno govora, ali razumijemo da je moment takav kakav jeste. Reforma pravosuđa će biti završena, odnosno znaćemo da je završena onog trenutka kad političari prestanu biti ti koji upravljaju ljudima iz pravosuđa, nego postanu predmet pravosuđa i procesuiraju. Mislim da se to odnosi i na aktuelni trenutak i da se u pravosuđu itekako može tražiti rješenje. Drugi stav, vezan za izborni zakon o kom ste govorili, je da nije opcija pregovarati o izbornom zakonu dok se ne normalizuje rad institucija Bosne i Hercegovine, koje na koncu trebaju taj izborni zakon da usvoje. Ne možemo se praviti da je sve u redu. I pitanje. Imajući u vidu dosadašnji tolerantan pristup i spremnost na pregovore sa onima koji destabilizuju državu i povlače antidejtonske poteze, što nikad nije rezultiralo ničim dobrim, nego naprotiv ponavljanjem i eskalacijom sličnih poteza, molimo vas da nam odgovorite da li ste spremni u potpunosti konzumirati svoj mandat kako bi zaštitili prije svega sigurnost građana i obezbijedili nesmetano funkcionisanje institucija države Bosne i Hercegovine. Ovo pitanje, koje iz različitih razloga, a u posljednje vrijeme najviše iz straha, postavlja najveći broj građana Bosne i Hercegovine, smatramo da zaslužuje prvo zbog njih, a onda i zbog nas ovdje u sali, vrlo jasan i precizan odgovor. Smatram da obrazloženje nije potrebno.
Hvala. Ispred kluba DF-a, gospodin Đorlangić, izvolite.
Zahvaljujem, predsjedavajući. Dobar dan svima. U entitetskom parlamentu u Narodnoj skupštini Republike Srpske se dešava ukidanje državnih zakona i državnih institucija i prema najavama to će se i nastaviti, uključujući i oružane snage Bosne i Hercegovine. Za sve što će se dešavati u Bosni i Hercegovini u narednom periodu, primarnu odgovornost će imati ili imaju domaće pravosudne institucije, ali i funkcija visokog predstavnika za Bosnu i Hercegovinu. Da li ste svjesni da u slučaju narušavanja sigurnosti i mira u Bosni i Hercegovini i novih ljudskih žrtava, a što može naslutiti zbog nepoštivanja opšteg okvirnog sporazuma za Bosnu i Hercegovinu i neizvršavanje obaveza ureda OHR-a iz aneksa 10 ovog sporazuma, i vi na poziciji visokog predstavnika za Bosnu i Hercegovinu možete snositi ne samo moralnu i političku odgovornost, već i pravnu odgovornost za sve ono što se može u tom slučaju desiti. Zahvaljujem.
Hvala. Ispred kluba HDZ-a, šef kluba, gospodin Lovrinović, izvolite.
Dobar dan, zahvaljujem. Poštovani gospodine Schmidt, dakle, ovo što ću ja reći nije u formi pitanja, ali evo možete prokomentirati ako budete smatrali za potrebnim. Dakle, u prigodi sam vam zapravo ovoga trenutka iznijeti neka moja razmišljanja i stavove koje će vam, nadam se, dobro doći u vašem radu. Naime, u Bosni i Hercegovini je sve češća praksa da se povlače službeni potezi, nazoči različitim formalnim sastancima, zakazuju formalne sjednice tijela, iznose stavovi i slično, koji nisu uopće dogovoreni, niti usuglašeni sukladno postojećim procedurama. Nažalost, ni ova sjednica nije zakazana sukladno važećim odredbama Poslovnika i procedurama. Navešću samo neke drastične primjere kršenja navedenoga. Na primjer, djelovanje ministrice Turković je uglavnom mimo predviđene procedure. Nastup člana predsjedništva Komšića u Njujorku također. Prekjučerašnje pismo gospodina Zvizdića, gospodina Izetbegovića Briselu i sl. Nažalost, moram konstatirati da prije svega ili gotovo da prije svega to ili isključivo čine dužnosnici iz reda bošnjačkog naroda. Na taj način, a obnašajući određene dužnosti, stvaraju percepciju da su oni ili ono što rade zapravo država, a svi drugi su remetiljački čimbenici. Važno je da znate, svaka službena sjednica, svaki službeni nastup, svaki službeni posjet i razgovor u ime tijela vlasti BiH ima predviđenu i dogovorenu proceduru, koja nažalost i danas prekršena. Drugi problem predstavlja sve češće predstavljanje poteza i odluka koje donosi zastupnički dom, kao stavove i odluke parlamentarne skupštine, što jednostavno nije točno i stvara konfuziju. Predlagali smo da se i danas obratite zastupnicima i izaslanicima oba doma, što nažalost nije uvaženo. Gospodine Schmidt, pitanje legitimnog zastupanja naroda u tijelima vlasti Bosne i Hercegovine, koja predstavljaju narode sukladno Ustavu, znači predsjedništvo, domovi naroda, mora predstavljati volju hrvatskog naroda, odnosno drugih naroda. Za nas tu nema pogodbe, sve drugo je stvar dogovora i kompromisa. I još samo nešto. Bosna i Hercegovina je jedina država na svijetu čiji parlament, odnosno ovaj zastupnički dom u kojem ste danas, ima dvije parlamentarne većine. Jedna je formalna u kojoj su HDZ, HNS, SDA i SNSD. I ima alternativnu parlamentarnu većinu u kojoj je SDA i sve ostale parlamentarne stranke koje ne čine ovu formalnu većinu. Formalna većina služila je samo jedanput da se formira vijeće ministara i da snosi ili nosi odgovornost, a alternativa vlada i donosi odluke. Vjerujemo da ćete pogoditi. Taj demokratski patent osmislila je stranka Demokratske akcije. Stavljam vam se na raspolaganje da o ovome i svemu drugom razgovaramo kad i ako to želite. Dakle, možete prokomentirati ako želite, ako ne, hvala lijepo.
Ispred kluba naše stranke, gospodin Kojović, izvolite.
Zahvaljujem predsjedavajući, pozdravljam sve prisutne i zahvaljujem se gospodinu visokom predstavniku Schmidtu na prilici da ga danas čujemo direktno i da čujemo neke njegove stavove. Moje pitanje je sljedeće. Mi smo danas svjedoci da je Njemačka, on se nekoliko puta referirao u svom govoru na to, prošla izuzetno dug put od nacističke Njemačke do danas jedne Njemačke koja je samo ne ekonomska velesila u Europi, nego i da tako kaže moralni svetionik postala Evropske unije. Vi ste spomenuli zadnji korak tog jednog procesa koji je bio ujedinjenje Njemačke, rušenje Berlinskog zida. Ali naravno niste se referirali na jedan dugotrajan, mukotrpan i težak proces denacifikacije Njemačke koji je morao prethoditi svemu tome da bi danas Njemačka bila simbol najviših demokratskih standarda, ljudskih prava i svega ostalog, u kojoj je također, između ostalog da kažem, zakonski zabranjeno negiranje holokausta i drugih nacističkih zločina. Zanima me da li ćete se u narednom periodu baviti, pošto ako ste sigurno stekli vrlo jasnu sliku šta se događa u Bosni i Hercegovini i ovih 25 godina, a intenzivno u posljednjih par mjeseci, da li vi, da li OHR možete i šta mislite uraditi u smislu, naravno da denacifikacija nije ispravna riječ, ali da se na neki način krene sa razbijanjem nacionalističkih narativa koji u konačnici održavaju nacionalističke političke subjekte na vlasti koji žive od te retorike i stvara se jedan zatvoreni krug iz koga, kao što vidite, mi 25 godina nismo u stanju izaći. Hvala vam.
Zastupnik Jasmin Emrić, izvolite.
Zahvaljujem, uvaženi predsjedavajući. Uvaženi visoki predstavniče, u svom obraćanju ste naglasili da je u ovom aktualnom političkom trenutku najvažnije deblokirati rad Parlamentarne skupštine Bosne i Hercegovine. Da li smatrate da je svrsishodno, te da li ste spremni primijeniti i financijske sankcije protiv zastupnika i zastupnica koji ne izvršavaju svoju ustavnu i zakonsku obavezu na način da ograničite primanja, plaća i naknada za one koji neopravdano izbjegavaju rad, te na taj način blokiraju rad Parlamentarne skupštine Bosne i Hercegovine već duže vrijeme. Hvala.
Hvala, nemamo više pitanja. Ako je gospodin Schmidt spreman, može odgovoriti na postavljena pitanja. Izvolite.
Thank you very much for these questions describing the important issues we have to talk about. I'm not Paddy Ashton, and we will not come back to these times because the handing over to Parliament and to the local authorities has taken path. But, as I said, all these competences, they are lying in the drawer and they are not off. And so I would see, you said that give me a short and clear yes or no answer. Normally in political life it's not so easy to say yes or no. I would give another answer. Indeed, yesterday I visited the Constitutional Court and talked with the President and some others about the decisions, not about they have to define it on themselves, but in which direction they have been in the recent times. So I'm reasonably confident that the Constitutional Court will and has made clear decisions, referring to the forest law, for example, that things are not appropriate and to not meet the requirements of the Constitution Annex 4. So, if there is already a decision, it's not on the High Representative to have another same decision, what probably could be basically the case, but we have not the problem of decision, we have the problem of implementation. And that's another issue, where we have to sit and think how we can afford. Let me please be not clear, only clear in this understanding that I'm working with this. It's not only me, because the question of implementation is the most important thing. So some legislation done in the now in the RSNA is not conform to Dayton, and so is not working. That's clear. I'm working to get a joint implementation issue. The positive thing is, by the way, that the Constitutional Court is very independent and strict. By the way, yesterday I heard that it's less than 1% of the decisions which have been made under the participation of the international judges. So I wouldn't see this as a challenge, but as an opportunity. Mr. Maracinovic, you have referred to the judiciary reform, and indeed, if I read the Priebe report, I have to ask me what has been achieved since then. The Priebe report, I'm sure you know it, that we have to definitely work to get the state of law better done. This includes the situation looking to all parts of responsible people, including the courts and so on. Not to blame any court, no, but to see that there's a necessity to have the confidence and trust of the people that this is their case being decided and nobody has influenced the judge. So let's have a look on this. Let's have a look on the way, should I say, scandals are worked with. To be honest, life experience says you will not avoid in any country life without scandals. The distinction is how you deal with the scandals, if they are just put and or not. So I think Priebe report, this is a very important point I see, because we have to strengthen the juridical sector. Electoral law, election law. First of all, I think that what the Venice Commission and ODIHR have written and the Council of Europe is very important. And then I know, and we know, that there is discussion about how to organize the election, especially those for the presidency. I know that today in this city there are a lot of talks with some people coming from outside and with people in. Yes, basically I agree. This has to be passed here, the legislation, not by decree or by any international institution. But I think it would be very good if we come to a joint solution about the electoral law. I see, with respect to all questions which have been tendency the same, when do you make use of your competences? I cannot exclude that I'm making use of my competences, but I can exclude that I will make the easy way of using competences, because we have to go the harsh way before to go through not only the institutions, but to have some political approach, and this is indeed working these days. I am slightly optimistic that some of the legislation which we are discussing now, or future legislation, will not happen, and this somehow is as well a merit to all those who have worked with, and I'm among them. About the both houses, yes, you're right. Why should I not sit in with the colleagues in the House of People? So I'm prepared to do this in the same way and to discuss, hoping that all people are represented there. Political interests in European Parliament are more complicated than here in Switzerland. Similarly, and in Belgium, I can tell you it's as well not easy to sit in the federal parliament. But just I think what is the distinction, that here is the blockade, and this does not work out. This is unacceptable to do this, maybe from 10:15 to 12:30 to let out the steam of the discussion. But not as a strategy. No, this is not a strategy. This is just reactive. And those who are not committed to work together, they show no strength. They are showing weakness. Denazification, Mr. Konovic, thank you about the question. I share with you the observation that we definitely, I think, have to work not to indoctrinate anybody, but to offer, especially to the younger generation, a lot of possibility to hear and to make their own decision. I've heard, I'm not familiar with all educational programs and curriculums, but let me slightly say, and when I say slightly, then I mean this politely, but this does not mean that I do not look on it, that I'm a little bit astonished that, correct me if I'm wrong, the curricula for different ethnic students are different. That's not good. And I can tell you, I have been in the commission working with the German-Czech joint commission about to look on the future. There have been as well disputes, other understandings. But you have to do the work. And this is not honoring any ethnic speciality. Yes, there will be harsh insights. And the difference in Germany is that basically the Germans themselves, them all, they knew that something went dramatically wrong, if to be it, that's not a good wording to say, because it's more. But we met us in saying, after harsh years, that there is a need to look ahead and to say, this will never happen again. And sometimes, in some sentences I'm reading in newspapers, I'm not quite sure whether everybody takes this every day in his mind. And we should work to keep the younger generation in mind. If you have now asked me, when are you starting to make use of your competences, I could say, I'm already making use of my competences. Not in the way in the bulletin, but aside and behind. That's my way, I see. And I repeat again to all those who are thinking this would be easy times. I know my predecessor has spent a long time here. It took as well a long time to have legislation. It is not to be counted in years, but is to be seen that we should make progress to use and have a solution in other possibilities. But again, they are in the drawer, and I know exactly where the drawer is and how to open it. Thank you very much.
Hvala najljepša. Još jednom se srdačno zahvaljujemo visokom predstavniku, gospodinu Schmidtu, na obraćanju predstavničkom domu Parlamentarne skupštine Bosne i Hercegovine, na odgovoru na postavljena pitanja. Svima vama se srdačno zahvaljujem na učešću u radu današnje sjednice Zastupničkog doma Parlamentarne skupštine Bosne i Hercegovine i ovim zaključujem današnje zasjedanje. Hvala vam lijepo.